Hello and welcome to The Big Fight. Now, if you're watching this particular episode with a drink in your hand, then you're probably already breaking the law if you're in some states. And if you're in other states, then you should start worrying a bit, because the way things are going and the way political parties are all now jumping onto the prohibition bandwagon, maybe soon that drink will be illegal in other states as well. You already have a situation in India now where prohibition was always there in Gujarat. It was there to some extent in states like Kerala and a couple in the northeast. Now Bihar prohibition, and this week Tamil Nadu has started to see forms of prohibition really rolling out. So is this the trend that we're going to see more and more of? And yes, there is a big problem with alcoholism, but is prohibition the real solution? That's what we're going to debate at great length today on The Big Fight. And we have a huge panel to take us through all facets of this particular discussion. Pawan Verma joining us from the JDU, having just enforced prohibition in Bihar. Aditi Mittal, writer and stand-up comedian who doesn't feel that prohibition is the answer to anything. Shehzad Poonawalla, representing the Congress party, which has done prohibition in some form or the other in Kerala, and therefore that's the party position. Niranjan Mukhopadhyay, journalist, author, written that book on Narendra Modi and has studied the in a sense, analyzed to some extent what actually happened when prohibition was enforced in Gujarat. We're also being joined from Chennai by Mr. Panyan Rajan, who's from the AIADMK, which has just enforced the first steps of what is going to be phased prohibition in Tamil Nadu. We have RJ Umang joining us from Patna, who's going to tell us what he thinks has been the impact in Bihar of prohibition. Joining us from Mumbai, our old friend Prahlad Kakkar, great to have you with us, and Dilip Cherian joining us from Kolkata, both of whom are reasonably horrified as all that's happening with as prohibition rolls out. So we will get their take on it. And Shaina NC going to join us in just a couple of minutes as well to give us her take. All right, first, just your quick opening line. Is prohibition really the answer? And we'll come to the evils around drink, and it's shocking that people are, men in particular, well, almost overwhelmingly men, blowing up their entire family's income, blowing up their savings in drink. That's awful. But is prohibition the answer?
I think ultimately in a democracy, the making of public policy must in some way internalize what the public itself is asking. And in Bihar at least, the demand for total prohibition came in an overwhelming and unambivalent manner from the people itself. It was during the Bihar election that Chief Minister Nitish Kumar, who had not imposed it earlier, began to get this feedback overwhelmingly from the people, especially women. And that is when he said that he is going to impose prohibition. Initially, he wanted to do it in a phased manner. But interestingly enough, when stocks began to come to the shops where IMFL liquor was to be available, it was picketed by people to prevent stocks from going,
so
and therefore he
you're saying his position was that I am the leader, the people want this, so I should follow them and therefore do this. That's essentially the demand from the people. All right, Mr. Rajan, let me come to you. Is that the same situation in Tamil Nadu? The AIADMK, of course, has been in power there for the 5 years. You didn't have prohibition. Now you seem to be rolling it out there. Is it just as something which you came across as an important part of electoral politics now?
Yeah, in Tamil Nadu, as you know, almost all the parties who matter had committed to bring in prohibition. In that, most of them had said first day, first signature, total prohibition. It's only AIADMK under the leadership of Amma who committed a step-by-step introduction, where the first phase, we're closing down about 500 shops out of 6,850 retail outlets which we have currently, and we've also reduced the time the shop is available by about 2 hours. It's going to be open only from 12 o'clock to 10 p.m. and the next step would be to take away the bars which are attached to the shops, and there are about 4 or 5 steps Amma has outlined before which the total prohibition will come into Tamil Nadu. The primary driver is the need from the poor women who are running their households, and often domestic violence is associated with excessive drinking. The number of addicts in Tamil Nadu have been growing, and there have been a political demand. I mean, there has been a significant section of the poor women
No, we get where the demand is coming from. We get what the problem is. We get what the demand, where the demand is coming from, and over the course of the program, we'll try and find whether this is the right answer. It's been tried elsewhere, hasn't always worked. Is this a writing on the wall, Prahlad, that at some point this will continue to roll out state after state after state?
Until the consequences of prohibition start hitting everybody, and you'll realize that the level of corruption will rise hugely, especially among people who are supposed to enforce the prohibition, which is the cops, the administration, and the politicians themselves, because they will find that there is a huge and lucrative business in actually clandestinely producing alcohol.
Prahlad is essentially saying is that all that this leads to is not necessarily the controlling of drinking, but an increase in corruption. So government money going into private hands.
I suspect that politicians are listening to the wrong signals. What they are listening to is that women want more control over income and they want greater safety at home, because men are drinking away the family's income and then beating up the wives or the women at home. So I think what they are asking for, what women are asking for, is not necessarily prohibition, but the impact of excessive drinking amongst a lot of people. So I don't think they're asking for prohibition.
No, women
what they're asking for is security at home.
Yes, but women are
because
asking for
they are
prohibition
using it as a
because
proxy
of the
for
impact.
security at home.
Yeah, but women are asking for prohibition, but
And
they're
I think
asking,
that
you're right,
that's
they're asking for protection from a certain consequences of very heavy drinking.
That is where the state ought to alter the practices of people and make sure that liquor is not available in the manner it is. And I think perhaps Tamil Nadu's method of saying, look, let's limit the number of hours in which liquor is sold, let's limit the number of places, and hopefully that will be matched with the kinds of things that the state needs to do, which is ensure that there is an environment where this kind of drinking is not found acceptable, and socially as well as
but making
within the family.
You know, Prahlad, the Delhi people have been trying to saying let's control heavy drinking for 2,000 years, 3,000 years.
My objection to prohibition is exactly that.
Yeah, but it hasn't actually had an impact.
No, my objection to prohibition is exactly that.
It won't work. That's what you're saying. Right, Nilanjan, you've looked at the example closely in a state like Gujarat, which has actually had prohibition since 1960. People don't sometimes realize just how many years we've had prohibition in Gujarat. Right, 50 plus years now of prohibition. Does it work?
Well, Gujarat, in many ways it epitomizes all that is wrong with the prohibition policy, because it's extremely ironical that in a state of Gandhi, you have to use enforcement to bring in certain things to actually ensure some kind of regulation. A person who talked about all his life about self-denial, you have not been able to teach your own people self-denial about something which is claimed to be so very vital for a peaceful social environment.
But
as far as Gujarat,
on a practical
on a practical basis, you have home delivery of liquor in Gujarat.
They say it's faster than pizza.
It is faster. You actually get it home delivered. You have a fairly elaborate system where you can also get it legally if you are a visitor to the state. In 2013, the Gujarat government liberalized the liquor laws further for the Vibrant Gujarat Summit, so to ensure that people who are coming from outside could get much better quality liquor available. I had the opportunity to ask this question of Mr. Modi when I was working on the biography on him, and I asked him that if you, what about prohibition? Do you think that it would ever go away from Gujarat? So he said that, look, it is actually a cultural thing. Now the point is, at that point when he was trying to justify that we cannot really lift, he says it's basically the people who accept that culturally we are not attuned to drinking. But nowhere does any of the people who are supporting prohibition say that there are other reasons for it. Prohibition, the way it is being imposed now, is actually retrograde politics, because it imposes on it kind of attacks the rights of the people to decide the way they want to live their right. It's bad economics. And
I mean, the first part of it is more debatable, because you will sometimes the state steps in to stop people. Drugs aren't legal. The reason drugs aren't legal is where the state has stepped in and said you shouldn't do it.
There are better ways to make it enforceable.
Yeah, enforceability is an issue. Now let me come to the Congress party, and then I want to come to China in a minute also. You also, in a sense, in Kerala have followed some form of prohibition, despite the fact that, I think the point that is being made here is that it often doesn't work. We understand why you are trying to do it, but actually it doesn't work. And Kerala may be a great example of that. It's, has had one of the highest per capita consumptions of alcohol, and I don't think things have really changed too much now.
You're wrong on that actually.
Why?
There's an NGO which is doing a survey in Thiruvananthapuram which has submitted its data to the Supreme Court, the ADIC, and there has been a remarkable fall not only in consumption of alcohol for the first time in Kerala in so many years, but also in crime rates, violence against women, and in fact I can back you up by saying that even in Bihar, after the imposition of this policy, there has been a fall in crime rates. Let me make a larger point that needs to be made. Our policy is more of a regulation policy rather than a complete prohibition policy, in Kerala at least. It went to the Supreme Court, and let me quote what the Supreme Court of India on 30th December 2015, a bench of Shivkirti Singh and Vikramjit Sen said. It said that the Constitution obligates the state, if not to curtail, at least to contain the consumption of alcohol in the state. And then it went on to elaborate the reasons why it upheld our policy, which it said was that families are getting destroyed, resources of the family get diverted towards alcohol consumption, and the worst victims of this are women and children. There is one aspect that corruption may increase. There is another aspect that you get a home delivery of an alcohol bottle.
It can't be
but
enforced.
one second. That is the problem of the implementer. If Mr. Modi has not implemented the policy as Mr. Nitish Kumar has, you have to blame the implementer. But you cannot blame the idea that alcohol is not good for our health. It is there as a constitutional principle. Gandhiji advocated for it. And this is not about, one second, we also put a prohibition on drugs. Now you will tomorrow say that the free choice should include consuming drugs. No. Should that be the argument? But should the argument then be that people should be allowed to go around doing what
we know what Gandhiji did say, a snake can only destroy the body. If I remember correctly, a snake can only destroy the body, but the curse of drink corrupts the soul, or something like that.
Are you saying that the wisdom of the Supreme Court in upholding the policy and upholding this larger principle that alcohol consumption should be contained, if not curtailed, is wrong?
No, I'm not.
But you cannot blame us.
The Supreme Court. I'm trying to figure out. We are talking about prohibition out here. Controlling drugs and controlling drugs is one thing. Controlling excessive drinking is a separate thing. Aditi, let me get you in. Are we sometimes forgetting that there's actually a range of so from alcoholism to people misusing drinks and going home and beating up their wives and depriving their children of food? Obviously, that's wrong. The question is whether the response to that is prohibition.
I think the reason that has been given, of course, has been stated as women's safety, and a lot of young women and children have said that they want prohibition. But alcohol is an excuse for violence. It is not the reason for violence. When women ask for, something like prohibition, they are asking for, as Dilip said, more rights over the family's income. They are asking for more control over what happens with their own lives. And that is not entirely done by alcohol. That is done by, of course, a systemic cultural change in the way we think. We want more respect. Tomorrow, if you ban alcohol, when a woman goes and complains about domestic abuse, the cop will even turn to her and say, "Arey, daru hi nahi piya, to maar kaise sakta tha?" We need a more sensitive police. We need a more sensitive society towards women's problems, as opposed to these stopgap and honestly mythological measures.
But exclusive.
They are not. They're not. I agree. They are not.
I think what she's saying is not wrong, but I would say that given context of society, it's not either or. Women's empowerment is a goal which is entirely endorsable. At the same time, if you can take measures by which they can redeem their dignity, which is trashed very pervasively almost every night, through a measure which prevents it. I mean, I have met women in Bihar who say that there is a quantum change in the quality of their life.
Okay, before I go to China.
And I'll just make one other point. Nilanjan mentioned about free choice. Yes, free choice is important, but is there not a choice for women to have a more harmonious domestic life? Is there not a choice for children to get more nutrition? So therefore,
I think nobody is questioning that goal. I think it's the steps to that goal that is really the subject of debate out here. Let me just go to RJ Umang out there in Patna before I come across to China in some detail. Umang, at the end of the day, you interact with a lot of people there in Patna. has the situation changed as much as Pawan is saying?
The issue was domestic violence. What government should have done, make stringent laws against the domestic violence and all that. But prohibition of or banning alcohol is not a solution, which is, more or less everybody is saying that.
It's not either or. Of course, there are laws that prevent domestic violence, but if you can put a finger on a source which is the cause of the maximum domestic violence
No.
and
Because
try and
the
prevent
question-
that, I'll tell you why. Quite frankly, what women are reporting is that the availability and easy availability of drink is not a matter of measurable consumption. There is a pattern that was observed, and it's not been observed only in
But
Bihar.
as he's saying, if you take the example of Gujarat, over a period of time with prohibition, it's not that the availability of alcohol goes down. If anything, it's more. It could be dangerous quality. Take the example, Aditi, for example, of what happened, and you were talking about it a short while back, as to what happened in the United States. It's not as if prohibition led to the drying up of alcohol. It actually led to more alcohol consumption. It led to the rise of the mafia.
I think if you take Gujarat as the template, then I think prohibition is not working. But if you are making another attempt learning from the Gujarat experience,
Can I
I
just
think
intervene here?
let's give it a
What
chance.
Pawan is saying.
Let's give it a chance.
Let's take the history of prohibition in this country. Let me reel after state where prohibition has not worked. Uttarakhand, Haryana, Manipur. What guarantee is that it will work in Bihar? It's been tried. It's been tried in Tamil Nadu also. So it has probably the longest history of
Vikram,
failures
just
in this
a
country.
quick point. What Kerala has done is a model that could be the road ahead. What Kerala has done has only
Kerala
taken
has
out
not
one
worked.
second.
I mean,
Let me make my
go to
point.
Kerala right
Let
now,
me make
see
my
the number of
point.
people who are
Kerala has made an intelligent policy where you take spurious liquor out of the equation, and that is what we are trying to do. You get alcohol through the Beverages Corporation of Kerala. People can consume alcohol which is well regulated, which is not illegal, which is not spurious. And I think that is a model. Now somebody has tried an attempt. You're giving anecdotal evidence. He's giving you actual evidence that violence has come down, crimes have come down. You want to base your arguments on anecdotal evidence without giving the policy a fair chance.
Actually,
And I don't think that's fair.
I think our country's history and the history of prohibition is rife with examples of how it has not worked.
I am
so
giving
there's
you
no
example after
anecdotal
example
evidence.
that domestic violence, the women you are saying you are fighting the cause for, their violence against them has come down. Crimes against generally have come down. Driving under influence has come down.
We'll wait to
Accidents
see.
and roads
GDP
have come
is
down.
up.
The history of the world for the last 150 years has often shown that prohibition hasn't worked. I can't think of any example.
Then probably the constitution
The
makers were
Nordic
mistaken,
countries tried
and they should
prohibition,
not
they
have
went
been
back.
included, but they did,
Canada
and the
tried
Supreme Court has
prohibition,
upheld
went
it.
back. China, two questions really. Number one, do you think we are seeing a trend from Gujarat has started 50 years ago, then Bihar, now Tamil Nadu. Are you seeing a trend where state after state, for electoral reasons, I'm looking at all political parties, they're all right now saying prohibition is a great thing. So is this the way you see the country headed?
You cannot just typecast this in black and white. There are shades of grey. There is a directive principle in the constitutions that says that the state can decide. Now, you cited the example of Gujarat. Obviously, Mahatma Gandhi had a huge role to play when it came to banning of alcohol there. Now, is that to suggest that atrocities against women are reduced because there is no alcohol or alcohol is consumed? I think that in the 21st century, it would be stupid to correlate only one aspect of atrocity to women related to alcohol. I think the important point that we all as a society need to understand is that the youth of India that is pretty much going to determine in the 21st century whether we should be consuming alcohol or not and what the repercussions of it are. I think that even if you take community-wise, you look at Islam. In Islam, it's not okay to drink. In Christianity, it's okay to drink. So everywhere the parameters are quite different.
I guess the question that I'm asking is that if Gujarat is to be seen as the place where prohibition has been in place the longest, 50 years plus, it doesn't look as if it's working perfectly. There's a very well-established network of bootleggers now who can deliver alcohol to people across the state. So, in a sense, there's no real solution to that. The only thing is that from it being above the ground and the government getting tax revenues from it, it's gone underground. And therefore, the advice for, the question which I guess Bihar or Tamil Nadu or other states will have to be looking at is, is that going to be eventually where we're going to end up?
You cannot have a blanket ban and assume that that can work for every single state. Every single state has a constitutional provision under the directive principles where you can debate, deliberate and decide what's in the best interest of the state. But as I said, there are three parameters to look at. One is the youth's viewpoint, because they are the ones in the future who are pretty much going to determine the consumption in the days to come. The social impact, which includes atrocities against women, etc. And the third is the revenue to the state. So I think
Mr.
that
Rajan,
fundamentally these are the aspects.
Mr. Pandian Rajan, let me just get Mr. Rajan in. He's the latest person trying this experiment. So Mr. Rajan, let me just ask you, Tamil Nadu essentially did is, you said, all right, we're going to set up a network of state-owned liquor vends, which in a sense would help us to control it, right? Now you've started to phase it out, you've closed down 500 and you are reducing the number of hours. Is that really the right way to go, or could you, and is this going to lead eventually to total prohibition? Is that the path you are seeing? Or should the answer be to control the amount of alcohol that is being sold to one person, for example?
Tamil Nadu is actually the first state to introduce prohibition. Rajaji introduced it way back in 1937 in Salem, and then he extended it to the whole of Tamil Nadu. 1952, the first Prohibition Act was brought into Tamil Nadu. Even before Gujarat came in, I mean, we were the first to do that. One generation of Tamils had not tasted liquor at all. 1971 is when the DMK government under Karunanidhi brought in cheap liquor. And then you had Arak and toddy and experimented with everything. Now the last generation of Tamils have been through this whole thing, and there has been a huge upsurge of demand for bringing back prohibition. Amma has not done only these two things. She's also setting up de-addiction centers in every primary health center in the state. She's also trying to get the bars off. That's the next step going to be. You know, there's a classic case of people just drinking in the bars and going home drunk and making a mess of themselves. And there's a fair degree of that prevalent here. So the unique social structure of Tamil Nadu today demands this, and our movement is clearly towards total prohibition. And mark my words, this is not a state where violations of the Gujarat variety, where the bootlegger network can survive that easily. This is Amma's state, and law and order and enforcement of that is of the highest order. 5 years, you will see a total prohibition in Tamil Nadu. Step by step, in 5 measured steps, this will happen.